Hello, my friends, hello, and welcome back to another episode of Cat Tales. My name is Coffee, I'm your host, and today we are going to be reading chapters 8 through 11 of Forest of Secrets, the third book in the first arc of the Warriors series. Now, where we left off, Fireheart was playing detective and trying to figure out, number one, how Oakheart truly died in the battle with Sunning Rocks in book 1, and number 2, now he's trying to figure out who is the mother of Mistyfoot and Stonefur, two kits from RiverClan that Oakheart vowed to protect. He received information from an elder named Greypool in RiverClan that she technically raised them, but she is not their true mother, and she said they had the scent of ThunderClan on them, which means someone in ThunderClan was the mother, but we don't know who. So he's actively trying to figure that out. He's still dealing with Tigerclaw being Tigerclaw. Also more stuff with Cloudkit. Cloudkit being Cloudkit. Yeah, so let's get right into it. Starting chapter 8 with, quote, Fireheart crouched in the nursery, watching a litter of kits suckling their mother. For a moment he was filled with excitement to see the tiny creatures who were the future of the clan. Then something stirred in his mind. ThunderClan had no kits as young as these. Where'd they come from? He let his gaze travel from the kits to their mother and saw nothing but a rippling pelt of silver gray. The queen had no face. So, from this, we can make an inference that these are the two RiverClan kits, Mistyfoot and Stonefur, and their mother is a gray cat. But the cat had no face, so maybe it's not Greypool. Could be another gray cat. Fireheart choked back a cry of horror. As he stared, the silvery shape of the queen began to fade, leaving nothing but darkness. The kits squirmed and let out squeals of terror and loss. A bitterly cold wind rose and swept away the warm scents of the nursery. Fireheart leaped to his paws and tried to follow the sound of the helpless kits, lost in the wind-blown darkness. "I can't find you," he wailed. "Where are you?" Then a light appeared, soft and golden. Fireheart could see another cat sitting in front of him with the tiny kit sheltered between her paws. It was Spotted Leaf. Fireheart opened his mouth to speak to her. She gave him a look of infinite kindness before the image vanished, and Fireheart found himself scrabbling among the mossy bedding in the warrior's den. Spotted Leaf is always showing up for no reason. Like, bro, what are you doing here? Fireheart is debating if the dream was a prophecy, wonders who the kits are. I think it's pretty obvious who they are, and that StarClan is sending the message, with Spotted Leaf, of course. So, Fireheart leaves the warrior's den and notices that the Freshco pile is low again. Sandstorm is there and tells him that Whitestorm and Mousefur are out hunting right now with their new apprentices. Fireheart wonders if Greystripe took Brackenpaw out, but Brackenpaw comes out of the apprentice's den alone. Fireheart is frustrated with Greystripe for neglecting his apprentice, and Brackenpaw worries he won't be a warrior before Swiftpaw and Brightpaw. Fireheart says that's rubbish, there's a Britishism, and says that he can come hunting, and Sandstorm decides to come with them. So they pass by the apprentice training hollow and see Brindleface with her kits. She explains that they needed to stretch their legs from being stuck in camp because of the snow. Cloudkit is showing the other kits death berries and telling them the same thing Cinderpaw told him, to never eat them. Fireheart is very amused by this. Fireheart catches a mouse, and Brackenpaw barely catches a blackbird, looking upset that he was a little bit late on his timing. Fireheart says that what is important is that he caught it at all, and Sandstorm tells him he can take it to the elders. They're about to continue on when they hear a shriek from the direction of the training hollow. It sounds like a kit. They race over to the hollow to check it out. Quote, "Great StarClan," Sandstorm gasped. Just below the three cats loomed a bulky black and white animal. Fireheart picked up the rank scent of a badger. He had never seen one out in the open before, although he had often heard them shuffling noisily in the bushes. With one massive, hook-clawed paw, it was reaching into a gap between two rocks where Cloudkit was cowering. "Fireheart!" he wailed. "Help me!" Fireheart felt as if every hair on his body was bristling. He launched himself down into the hollow, his front paws outstretched for an attack. He was dimly aware of Sandstorm and Brackenpaw at his heels. Fireheart raked his claws down the badger's side, and the huge beast rounded on him with a roar, jaws snapping. It was fast. It might even have caught Fireheart if Brackenpaw hadn't leaped from the side, clawing for its eyes. The badger whipped its head around to where Sandstorm had sunk her teeth into one of its back legs. Kicking out strongly, it threw her off, and she rolled into the snow. Fireheart dashed in again to claw the badger's flank. Drops of scarlet blood fell onto the snow. The badger growled, but it was backing away now, and as Sandstorm got to her paws and advanced, spitting, it turned and lumbered off up the ravine. Fireheart spun around to Cloudkit. "Are you hurt?" Cloudkit crept out from the cleft in the rock, trembling uncontrollably. No." Fireheart felt shaky with relief. "What happened? Where's Brindleface?" "I don't know. We were all playing, and then I turned around and I couldn't see any of the others. I thought I'd come and find you, and then there was the badger." He let out a terrified mew and crouched down with his head on his paws. Fireheart was stretching his neck to give him a comforting lick when he heard Sandstorm say, "Fireheart, look." Fireheart turned. Brackenpaw was lying on his side, blood seeping from his hind leg into the snow. "It's nothing," he grunted, bravely trying to get to his paws. "Stay still while we look," Sandstorm ordered. Fireheart rushed over and examined the wound. To his relief, the slash on Brackenpaw's leg was long but not deep, and the bleeding had nearly stopped. "You were lucky, thanks Starclan," he meowed, "and you saved me from a nasty bite. It was a brave thing to do, Brackenpaw." The apprentice's eyes shone at Fireheart's praise. "It wasn't really brave," he mewed shakily. "I didn't have time to think. A warrior couldn't have done better," meowed Sandstorm. "But what's a badger doing out in daylight? They always hunt by night." "It must be hungry like us," Fireheart guessed. "Otherwise, it wouldn't attack something as big as Cloudkit." He turned back to the kit and nudged him gently to his paws. "Come on, let's get you back to camp." Sandstorm helped Brackenpaw to get up and patted beside him as he limped to the top of the hollow and toward the ravine. Fireheart followed with Cloudkit, who kept very close to him. As they reached the ravine, Brindleface burst out of it, frantically calling Cloudkit's name. Other cats came hurrying behind her, drawn out of the campfire, panic-stricken wailing. Fireheart spotted Running Wind and Dustpelt. Then his heart sank as Tigerclaw followed them out of the tunnel. Brindleface sprang at Cloudkit and covered him with anxious licks. "Where have you been?" she scolded. "I've been looking for you everywhere. You shouldn't run away like that." "I didn't," Cloudkit protested. "What's going on?" Tigerclaw shouldered his way to the front of the group of cats. Fireheart explained, while Brindleface continued to smooth down Cloudkit's ruffled fur. "We drove the badger off," he told the deputy. "Brackenpaw was very brave." All the while he was speaking, Tigerclaw stared at him with fierce amber eyes, but Fireheart held his head high. This time he had no reason to feel guilty. "You'd better go to Yellowfang and have that leg seen to," the deputy grunted to Brackenpaw. "As for you," he swung around and loomed threateningly over Cloudkit. "What were you doing, putting yourself in danger like that? Do you think that warriors have nothing better to do than rescue you?" Cloudkit flattened his ears. "I'm sorry, Tigerclaw. I didn't mean to get into danger." "Didn't mean to? Has no cat taught you any better than to go wandering away like that?" "He's only a kid," Brindleface protested mildly, turning her gentle green gaze on the deputy. Tigerclaw drew his lips back in a snarl. "He's caused more trouble already than all the rest of the kits put together," he growled. "It's time he learned a lesson. He can do some real work for a change." Fireheart opened his mouth to object. For once, Cloudkit hadn't meant to cause trouble. His bad fright had been punishment enough for straying away from Brindleface. But Tigerclaw was still talking. "You can go and look after the elders," he ordered. "Clear out their dirty bedding and fetch clean moss. Make sure they have enough fresh kill and go over their coats for ticks." "Ticks!" exclaimed Cloudkit, losing the last of his fear and outrage. "I'm not doing that. Why can't they see to their own ticks?" "Because they're elders," Tigerclaw hissed. "You need to start understanding a lot more about the ways of the clan if you ever want to be an apprentice." He glared at Cloudkit. "Go on, and keep at it until I tell you to stop." "Not the dictatorship." "You're not his parent, bro." Cloudkit looked mutinous for a moment longer, but not even he would defy Tigerclaw twice. He met the deputy's glare with hot blue eyes and then ran off toward the tunnel. Brindleface let out a mew of distress and followed him. "I always said bringing kitty pets into the clan was a bad idea," Tigerclaw growled to Dustpelt. He glared at Fireheart as he spoke, as if he was daring the young warrior to protest. "Man, how long must the eternal ragebait go on? Fireheart's locked in. Like, at this point, it's not even rage-inducing. It's just like, okay, man." Fireheart looked away. "Come on, Brackenpaw," he mewed, swallowing his anger. There was no point getting into a fight. "Let's get you to Yellowfang." "I'll go back and see if I can find our prey," offered Sandstorm. "We don't want that badger to get it." She started to scramble back up the ravine. Fireheart meowed his thanks after her and set off for the camp with Brackenpaw. The apprentice was limping quite badly and looked tired. As they approached the gorse tunnel, Fireheart was surprised to see Brokentail stumbling out with Yellowfang at his side. 2 guards, Darkstripe and Longtail, followed closely. "We must be mad taking him out like this," Longtail grumbled. "What if he runs off?" "Runs off?" rasped Yellowfang. "And I suppose you think hedgehogs can fly? He's not running anywhere, you stupid furball." Carefully, she cleared the snow from a smooth rock and guided Brokentail to it. He settled down with his blind face raised to the sun and sniffed the air. "It's a fine day," Yellowfang murmured, curling her scrawny gray body close to his. Fireheart had never heard her sound so gentle. "Soon the snow will melt, and New Leaf will be here. Prey will be good and fat. You'll feel better then." Even after his atrocities, Yellowfang still cares for him. It is so sweet, yet so sad. But also, couldn't be me. Like, I don't know. I get that she's a mother and he's her son, but also, don't coddle him. He's literally evil, like the most evil cat in the series so far. Listening, Fireheart recalled what no other cat knew, that Yellowfang was Brokentail's mother. Even Brokentail himself didn't know, and now he gave no sign that he had heard Yellowfang's kind words. Fireheart winced at the pain in the medicine cat's eyes. She had been forced to give Brokentail up when he was born because medicine cats were forbidden to have kits. And later she had blinded him to save her adopted clan from the rogue cat's attack. But she still loved him, although she meant no more to him than any other cat in ThunderClan. Fireheart could almost have yowled in sympathy with her. "I'll have to tell Tigerclaw about this," Darkstripe meowed fussily, pacing at the foot of the rock where the cat sat. He didn't give any orders to let the prisoner leave the camp. Stalking up to him, Fireheart pushed his muzzle into Darkstripe's face. Blue Star was clan leader last time I looked, he spat. And who do you think she's going to listen to? You or the medicine cat? Darkstripe reared up on his back legs, his lips drawn back to show his fangs. Behind him, Fireheart heard Brackenpaw hiss in alarm. He tensed, ready for the older warrior to strike, but before a fight could break out, Yellowfang interrupted them with a furious growl. Stop this nonsense. What's happened to Brackenpaw? Her flattened face appeared over the edge of the rock, creased with worry. He was clawed by a badger, Fireheart told her, with a last glare at Darkstripe. The old medicine cat jumped down stiffly and inspected Brackenpaw's leg, sniffing all along the wound. You'll live, she grunted. Go to my den. Cinderpaw's there, and she'll give you some herbs to press on that. Thank you, Yellowfang, Brackenpaw meowed and limped off. Fireheart followed, but before he entered the gorse tunnel, he looked back. Yellowfang had climbed back onto the rock and was sitting with her flank pressed close against Brokentail, gently licking his fur. Fireheart could just hear her rasping the soft noises that a queen would make to her kits. But Brokentail was as unresponsive as ever. He would not even turn to the she-cat and share tongues with her. Sadly, Fireheart padded into the tunnel. There were few bonds stronger than the one between a mother and her kits. Yellowfang clearly still felt that bond, even after all the grief that Brokentail had caused. Killing his father, destroying his own clan with his bloodthirsty leadership, attacking ThunderClan with a band of rogue cats. But in one part of Yellowfang's mind, he was still her kit. So how, Fireheart wondered, had Mistyfoot and Stonefur been separated from their mother? Why had Oakheart brought them to RiverClan? And most of all, why had no ThunderClan cats tried to find them? Asking the real questions. And that's the end of Chapter 8. We're going to get into Chapter 9. So, Fireheart brings Brackenpaw to Cinderpaw, and she tells Brackenpaw to rest in the medicine den for the night, and that his leg will be better in a day or two. Quote, she spoke cheerfully, without any bitterness that her own leg would never recover so well. I really admire her spirit for this, for not getting jealous about this. She tells Fireheart that she just gave Cloudkit mouse bile for the elders. Apparently, if you put some on ticks, they drop right off. Fireheart pities Cloudkit for having an extra punishment after the badger scare, but Cinderpaw says, quote, there's no arguing with Tigerclaw. Fireheart agrees and decides to go check on Cloudkit in the Elder's Den. Quote, as soon as he set paw in the Elder's Den, his nose wrinkled against the reek of the mouse bile. Small Ear was lying on one side while Cloudkit searched his gray fur for ticks. The Elder watched as Cloudkit dabbed some of the bile inside his hind leg. Watch it, young kit. Keep your claws sheathed. They are sheathed, muttered Cloudkit, his face screwed up with disgust. There, that's got it. You're done, Small Ear. Dappletail, who had been watching intently, glanced around at Fireheart. Your kin is very efficient, Fireheart, she rasped. No, Cloudkit, she added as the kit started toward her, carrying the bile-soaked moss. I'm sure I've no ticks, and I wouldn't wake One Eye if I were you. She nodded to where the old cat was sleeping, curled up beside the trunk of the fallen tree. She won't thank you for disturbing her. Cloudkit looked around hopefully. None of the other elders was there. Can I go then? He asked. You can see to One Eye later, Fireheart meowed. Meanwhile, you better get the dirty bedding out of here. Come on, I'll help you. And make sure the new lot's dry, growled Small Ear. Together, Fireheart and Cloudkit raked out the old moss and heather and made several trips to carry it out of the camp. Fireheart showed Cloudkit how to clean the mouse bile from his paws by rubbing them in the snow. Now we'll go and fetch some fresh moss, he meowed. Come on, I know a good place. I'm tired, Cloudkit complained as he trailed after Fireheart. I don't want to do this. Well, too bad, you have to, Fireheart retorted. Cheer up, it could be worse. Did I tell you that when I was an apprentice, I had to look after Yellowfang all on my own? Yellowfang? Cloudkit's eyes widened. Phew, I bet she was a grump. Did she claw you? Only with her tongue, Fireheart replied. And that's sharp enough. Cloudkit let out a short purr of laughter. To Fireheart's relief, he stopped complaining, and when they came to the patch of deep moss, he did his share of digging it out of the snow, and copied Fireheart as he showed him how to shake the worst of the moisture off. They were returning to the camp, their jaws laden with moss, when Fireheart saw a cat slip out of the gorse tunnel and bound up the side of the ravine. The massive body and striped pelt were unmistakable. It was Tigerclaw. Fireheart narrowed his eyes. The deputy had looked almost furtive, peering around before he left the tunnel and disappearing over the lip of the ravine as fast as possible. Fireheart felt uneasy. Something wasn't quite right. Uh-oh. Is he going to commit a crime? Cloudkit, he meowed, dropping his wad of moss on the ground. Take your load of bedding into the elders, and then come back for mine. There's something I've got to do. Cloudkit mewed in agreement through his mouth full of moss and carried on toward the tunnel. Fireheart turned and raced back up the slope to the place where Tigerclaw had disappeared. So Fireheart follows Tigerclaw to Lake Place, stopping to catch a mouse on the way. He's so intent on the trail afterwards and following it that he runs right into Tigerclaw. Fireheart makes up a lie that he was hunting for a bit after showing Cloudkit where to find good bedding, which is not entirely false. Tigerclaw demands to see the prey that he's caught, so Fireheart leads him back to the mouse that he buried for later. Fireheart can see that Tigerclaw wants to be able to blame Fireheart for something, but he can't this time, so he tells Fireheart to get on with it and takes the mouse back to camp. So, Fireheart watches him go, and when he's fully gone, he continues tracing Tigerclaw's trail to the two-leg fences. Quote, "The snow was churned up by the marks of many paws, too many for him to read. There were many strange scents, too. Several cats had been here, and recently." Fireheart wrinkled his nose in disgust. The cat scents were muddled up with those of long-dead prey and the stink of two-leg rubbish. Except for Tigerclaw's own scent, it was impossible to identify any of them. Thinking deeply, Fireheart sat washing his paws. There was no way of telling whether Tigerclaw had met these unknown cats or whether he had just crossed their trail. And he's about to set off for the camp again when he hears a meow behind him. Quote, "Fireheart! Fireheart!" Springing to his paws, he whirled around. Sitting on the fence at the end of her two-leg garden was his sister, Princess. Instantly, Fireheart raced across to the fence and leaped up beside her. Princess broke into a deep, throaty purr and rubbed the side of her face against his. "Fireheart, you're so thin!" she exclaimed, pulling away from him. "Are you getting enough to eat?" "No, nor is any cat in the clan," Fireheart admitted. "Prey is scarce in this weather." "Are you hungry now?" his sister asked. "There's a bowl of food in my two-legs nest. You can have it if you like." For a couple of heartbeats, Fireheart was tempted. His mouth watered at the thought of filling his belly with food he hadn't had to catch first. But common sense won. He couldn't possibly return to camp with two-leg scents all over him, and the warrior code forbade him to eat before feeding the rest of the clan. "Thanks, Princess, but I can't," he meowed. "I hope you're feeding Cloudkit," Princess mewed anxiously. "I've been watching for you for days, so you can tell me how he is." "He's doing well," Fireheart replied. "He'll be made an apprentice soon." Princess's eyes shone with pride, and Fireheart felt a prickle of uncertainty in his fur. He knew how much it meant to his sister to have given her firstborn to the clan. There was no way he could let her have any doubts about how the kit was settling into clan life. "Cloudkit's strong and brave," he told her, "and intelligent. And nosy, spoiled, disrespectful," he added to himself. But surely Cloudkit would learn soon enough when he grew used to clan ways. "I'm sure he'll make a fine warrior," he meowed. Princess purred. "Of course he will, with you to teach him." Fireheart's ears twitched with embarrassment. Princess thought he found it easy being a warrior. She didn't know the problems he had inside the clan, or how difficult it was to decide what was the right thing to do when he discovered things that affected the clan. "I better go," he mewed. "I'll come and visit you again soon. And when New Leaf comes, I'll bring Cloudkit with me." He gave Princess an affectionate lick in farewell and left her purring even harder at the thought of seeing her beloved kit again. Fireheart padded back along Tigerclaw's scent trail, keeping a lookout for prey as he went. After telling Tigerclaw he was hunting, he knew he had better return to camp with a respectable catch. Gradually, he became aware of an unfamiliar sound. He had to pause and think before he realized what it was. Somewhere, water was dripping. Glancing around, he saw a silver globule bulging at the end of a thorn twig. The droplet swelled and glittered in the sunlight before falling to melt a tiny hole in the snow. Fireheart raised his head. The patter of water was all around him now, and a warm breeze ruffled his fur. With a surge of joy, he realized that the harsh season of leaf bare was drawing to an end. Soon New Leaf would come, and prey would be plentiful again. The thaw had begun. So that's very good news. And that's the end of Chapter 9, and we're just going to get right into Chapter 10. Quote, "Back in the camp, Fireheart spotted Bluestar leaving the nursery. Quickly he dropped his catch on the pile of fresh kill and padded over to her. "Yes, Fireheart, what is it?" the leader asked. Her voice was calm, but with a sinking feeling, Fireheart knew that the lack of warmth meant she had not forgiven him for asking about the missing ThunderClan kits. Which is weird, because, okay, yeah, it happened recently, it was a few days ago, but she should be over it by now. He lowered his head respectfully. "Bluestar, I was hunting near Two Lake Place, and—" "Why there?" Bluestar interrupted. "Sometimes I think you spend too much time near Two Lake Place, Fireheart." "That is completely unnecessary of her. Can everyone calm down? Everyone needs to calm down." The way she's jumping down his throat, like she's always been his biggest believer, and I understand that she has reasons to kind of doubt him now, or be upset with him, but this is too weird of her, and she whatever she feels about him telling her about the kits, she needs to keep that to herself, and she needs to move on, because he hasn't bothered her about it, so she needs to just move on. I just thought there might be prey there," Fireheart stammered. "Anyway, while I was there, I smelled some strange cats." At once, Bluestar was alert. Her ears flicked up and she fixed her eyes intently on Fireheart. "How many cats? What clan were they from?" "I'm not sure how many," Fireheart admitted. 5 or 6 at least. "But they didn't have the scent of any clan." He wrinkled his nose as he remembered. "They smelled of crow food, which made me sure they weren't kitty pets." Bluestar looked thoughtful, and to Fireheart's relief, her hostility toward him seemed to ebb away. "How recent was the scent?" she asked. "Quite recent, but I didn't see any cats there. Except Tigerclaw," he added silently. But Fireheart decided not to tell Bluestar that part of the story. The leader was in no mood to listen to any more accusations against her deputy, and he had no evidence anyway that Tigerclaw had had anything to do with the unknown cats. So, probably a smart decision here. "Rogues from the Two Lake Place, perhaps?" Bluestar guessed. "Thank you, Fireheart. I'll tell the patrols to keep a lookout when they go that way. I don't suppose they're any threat to ThunderClan, but we can't be too careful." Thankfully, she seems to have retained some common sense and isn't completely being stupid. It's 2 days later. Fireheart is getting back from hunting, carrying a vole in his jaws. Most of the snow is now gone, and the forest is starting to grow ever so slightly, with little buds popping up. Prey is starting to be replenished more often. Fireheart then stops to visit the nursery. Cloudkit is continuing to help the elders, even though he's been cleared of his punishment. Fireheart believes he's finally starting to feel loyalty towards ThunderClan, which is a really good thing. He then stops to talk to Goldenflower, who is now heavy with kits. Quote, "Hello, Fireheart," she meowed. "Isn't it great to see the sun again?" Fireheart gave the queen's shoulder a friendly lick. "Soon it'll be New Leaf," he mewed. "Just in time for your kits. He broke off and spun around as he heard Tigerclaw's voice behind him, speaking his name. "Fireheart, if you've nothing better to do than stand gossiping with the queens, I have a job for you." Fireheart bit back an angry response. He'd been hunting all morning and paused for only a few moments to talk to Goldenflower. "I want you to take a patrol along the border of RiverClan," the deputy went on. "No cat has been that way for a few days, and now the snow is gone, we need to renew the scent markings. And make sure no RiverClan cats are hunting in our territory. If they are, you know what to do." "Yes, Tigerclaw," Fireheart mewed. Hedgehogs must be growing wings, he thought, if Tigerclaw had chosen him to lead a patrol. Then he realized that Tigerclaw was too clever to behave hostilely toward him in public. The deputy would be careful to treat him just the same as any other clan warrior, in case Bluestar noticed. "But I still don't trust you," Fireheart thought. Aloud, he meowed. "Whom shall I take with me?" "Any cat you like. Or do you need me to hold your paw?" Tigerclaw added with a sneer. "No, Tigerclaw." By now, Fireheart could barely keep his tongue curbed. He would have loved to swipe a claw over the deputy's scarred muzzle. Fireheart is in the eternal ragebait torture chamber in this episode. Like, Tigerclaw just will not stop. It's getting more and more consistent. He's definitely trying to get a rise out of him. He mewed a hasty goodbye to Goldenflower and headed for the warrior's den. Sandstorm was there, lying on her side and energetically washing, while Graystripe and Running Wind shared tongues nearby. "Who's up for a patrol?" Fireheart called. "Tigerclaw wants us to check the RiverClan border." Graystripe scrambled to his paws right away at the mention of RiverClan, of course, while Running Wind got up more slowly. Sandstorm paused in her washing and looked up at Fireheart. "Just when I was hoping for a bit of peace," she complained. "I've been hunting since dawn." But her tone was good-humored, not remotely as unfriendly as she was when he had first arrived in the clan, Fireheart thought, and almost at once she got up and shook herself. "All right," she mewed. "Lead on." "What about Brackenpaw?" Fireheart asked Graystripe. "Do you want to bring him along?" "Whitestorm and Mousefur took the apprentices out," Running Wind explained. "All of the apprentices. More fool them. They're hunting freshkill for the elders." And I had to look up what more fool them means. This is another Britishism. I've never heard this before. So, more fool them is a British, according to Wikipedia, it is a British idiom used to say that someone acted unwisely or foolishly, and it's their own fault for any negative outcome, essentially meaning they were silly for doing it. It's used judgmentally, often after someone reveals a naive action, like they didn't realize how much this is worth, well, more fool them. So, Running Wind is basically saying that Whitestorm and Mousefur taking all the apprentices hunting was foolish and probably difficult because they're managing teenagers, basically. That's what that means. I've never heard it before in my life. That really shows how dated these books are, because this one is from 2003. 2003. Fireheart led the way out of the camp, feeling a tingle in his paws as he leaped up the side of the ravine. It felt like moons since he'd had a good run without snow to freeze his paws off, and he wanted to stretch his muscles. "We'll head for the Sunning Rocks," he meowed, and then followed the border up to 4 trees. He set a brisk pace through the trees, but not so fast that he failed to notice the brilliant green fawns of new bracken beginning to unfurl, or the first pale buds of primroses pushing out of their green coverings. Birdsong filled the air, and the fresh scent of growing things. He slowed down to a walk as the patrol approached the edge of the forest. Ahead of him he could hear the sound of the river, free at last from its bonds of ice. "We're almost at the border," he meowed quietly. "From here on we have to keep alert. There may be RiverClan cats about." Graystripe stopped and opened his jaws to drink in scent from the breeze. "I can't smell any," he reported. Fireheart wondered if he was disappointed that Silverstream wasn't nearby. "Besides, they'll have plenty of prey now that the river's unfrozen," Graystripe added. "Why should they come and steal ours?" "I wouldn't put anything past RiverClan," growled Running Wind. "They'd steal the fur off your back if you didn't keep an eye on them." Fireheart saw Graystripe beginning to bristle. "Come on, then," he meowed hastily, trying to distract his friend before he said something that gave away his divided loyalties. "Let's go." He raced away through the last of the trees and burst out onto open ground. What he saw there brought him skidding to a halt, and the memory of his dream crashed into his mind like a thunderclap. Which dream? He's had like 3 this book! In front of the cats, the land sloped gently down to the river, or what had been the river. Swelled by the melting snow, the fast-flowing water had burst the banks and risen until it lapped the grass barely a rabbit length from Fireheart's paws. The tips of reeds just showed above it. Farther upstream, the Sunning Rocks were gray islands in the midst of a shimmering silver lake. The thaw had certainly come, but now the river was in full flood. So, that's not good. That's the end of chapter 10. And now we're going to get into chapter 11, the last chapter for today. Shorter episode. This one is kind of a filler episode. I mean, things still happen, but it's not like the first few episodes of this book where there was a lot going on. Chapter 11. Quote, "Great Star Clan," breathed Sandstorm. The other two cats grunted in agreement, but Fireheart was speechless with horror. He had instantly recognized the shining expanse of water, and now he recalled Spotted Leaf's ominous words. Water can quench fire. So maybe, is this the water he saw in that dream? Water can quench fire? Interesting. Fear chilled him as he struggled to understand how this flood could threaten his clan, so that he was hardly aware of Graystripe trying to attract his attention until the big gray cat pressed up close to his side. Panic flared in Graystripe's amber eyes, and Fireheart didn't need to ask why. His friend was afraid for Silverstream. The land was lower on the RiverClan bank, so the floodwaters could spread much farther. As for the camp on the island, Fireheart wondered how much of that was underwater. He had grown to like Silverstream in spite of his concerns, and he felt a grudging respect for Mistyfoot and Greypool, too. He didn't want to imagine them driven out of their camp, or worse, drowned. Running Wind had padded right to the water's edge and was gazing out across the river. "RiverClan isn't going to like this," he remarked. "And a good thing, too. It'll keep them off our territory." Fireheart felt Graystripe tense at the note of satisfaction in Running Wind's voice. He shot his friend a warning glance. "Well, we can't patrol the border now," he pointed out. "We better get back to camp and report this. Come on, Graystripe," he added firmly, seeing the warrior look once more with anguish across the swollen river. The patrol gets back, and Bluestar calls a clan meeting after they tell her the news about the river. She tells the clan that the camp may be in danger, and part of the territory is already flooded. Which might be true, might not be true. I don't think they said that, though. The clan gets nervous, but Darkstripe says to let RiverClan deal with the floods, since the river is kind of their problem, while the rest of the clan agrees. Then Bluestar says this, quote, "Silence," spat Bluestar. "The water could spread here before we know it. Something like this is bigger than clan rivalry. I don't want to hear that any RiverClan cats have died from these floods." Fireheart noticed a hot glow in her eyes as she spoke, as if her words meant more than she had said. Puzzled, he remembered how angry Bluestar had been with him for speaking to RiverClan warriors, yet now her strength of feeling suggested a current of sympathy running deep within her. This is very weird. Is this regular empathy? Or something more? By "I don't want to hear any RiverClan cats have died," do you mean Mistyfoot and Stonefur? I'm just saying. Patchpelt spoke up from among the elders. "I remember the last time the river overflowed, many moons ago. Cats from all clans drowned. Prey drowned too, and we went hungry even though our paws stayed dry. This is not just RiverClan's problem." "Well said, Patchpelt," meowed Bluestar. "I remember those days too, and I hoped I would never have to see such times again. But since it has happened, these are my orders. No cat is to go out alone. Kits and apprentices must not leave the camp without at least one warrior. Patrols will go out to discover how far the floods reach. Tigerclaw, see to it." "Yes, Bluestar," meowed the deputy. "I'll send out hunting patrols too. We must build up a stock of prey before the water rises any farther." "Good idea," agreed Bluestar. She raised her voice again to address the whole clan. "The meeting is over. Go to your duties." She leaped down lightly from the high rock and padded across to talk with Patchpelt and the other elders. Fireheart was waiting to see if Tigerclaw would choose him for a patrol when he noticed Graystripe edging away from the circle of cats. Fireheart headed after him and caught up just as he broke for the gorse tunnel. "Where do you think you're going?" he hissed in the Grey Warrior's ear. "Bluestar just said that no cat should go out alone." Graystripe turned a panicky look on him. "Fireheart, I have to see Silverstream," he protested. "I have to be sure she's okay." Fireheart let out a long sigh of exasperation. He understood how his friend was feeling, but he could hardly have chosen a worse time to go visiting his mate. "How will you get across the river?" he asked. "I'll manage," Graystripe promised grimly. "It's only water." "Don't be such a mouse brain," Fireheart spat, remembering the time Graystripe had fallen through the ice when Silverstream had rescued him. "You nearly drowned once before. Wasn't that enough for you?" Graystripe didn't answer. He just swung around and made for the tunnel again. Fireheart glanced over his shoulder. The other cats in the clearing were breaking up into small groups under Tigerclaw's direction, ready to go out on patrol. "Stop, Graystripe," he hissed, halting his friend at the entrance to the tunnel. "Wait there." Once he was sure Graystripe had done as he asked, he bounded across the clearing toward the deputy. "Hey, Tigerclaw," he meowed. "Graystripe and I are ready to go. We'll check the RiverClan boundary downstream of the Sunning Rocks, all right?" Tigerclaw narrowed his eyes, clearly displeased that Fireheart had taken it upon himself to choose which area he was going to patrol. But he had no reason to refuse, especially with Bluestar in earshot. "All right," he growled. "Try to bring some prey back as well." "Yes, Tigerclaw," Fireheart replied, dipping his head before turning to race back to Graystripe. "Okay," he panted. "We're on patrol, so at least no cat will wonder where we've gone." "But you—" Graystripe began to protest. "I know you have to go," Fireheart meowed, "but I'm coming with you." He felt a prickle of guilt as he spoke. Even on patrol, he and Graystripe wouldn't be expected to cross clan boundaries. Bluestar would be furious if she knew that 2 of her warriors were risking their lives to go into enemy territory when their own clan needed them so badly. But Fireheart couldn't just stand there and let Graystripe go alone. His friend could be swept away in the floods and never return. "Thanks, Fireheart," murmured Graystripe as they left the tunnel. "I won't forget this." Days since breaking the warrior code? 0. They head out towards the river, towards Sunning Rocks. The ground is very muddy and slippery, showing how the melted snow has affected a lot, like the whole forest. When they reach Sunning Rocks, it is already submerged. Only some rocks are peeking out above the water, so this is not a good sign. They decide to try and find the stepping stones downstream as a way to cross when they hear a tiny wailing sound. Graystripe finds where it is. Quote, "Fireheart saw that the current had driven a mat of twigs and debris up against the Sunning Rocks. 2 kits balanced precariously on it, their tiny mouths stretched wide as they wailed for help. Even as Fireheart watched, the current tugged at the mat, threatening to sweep it away. Come on," he yelled to Graystripe. "We've got to reach them somehow." Taking a deep breath, he waded into the flood. The water soaked into his fur at once, and a paralyzing icy chill crept up his legs. The tug of the current made it harder to stay on his paws with every step he took. Graystripe splashed in behind him, but when the water reached his belly fur, he stopped. "Fireheart," he choked out. Fireheart twisted around to give him a comforting nod. He could understand how the river might terrify Graystripe after his near drowning a few moons ago. "Stay there," he meowed. "I'll try to push the mat over to you." Graystripe nodded, trembling too violently to speak. Fireheart waded forward a few more paces, then launched himself into the current and began to swim, thrashing his legs instinctively to push himself through the black water. They were upstream of the Sunning Rocks. If Starkland was kind, he should be carried down toward the kits. For a moment he lost sight of them in the wind-ruffled waves, though he could still hear their terrified cries. Then the smooth gray bulk of a Sunning Rock loomed up beside him. I love how they're called Sunning Rock, singular. He kicked out strongly, fearing for one panic-stricken heartbeat that he would be swept right past. The current swirled. Fireheart's paws worked furiously, and the river tossed him against the rock, driving the breath out of his body. He scrabbled at the rough surface, bracing himself against the rushing water, and found himself face to face with the 2 kits. They were both very small, still suckling from their mother, Fireheart guessed. One was black and one gray, their fur plastered against their tiny bodies, and their brilliant blue eyes wide with terror. They were crouched on a tangled mat of twigs, leaves, and 2-leg rubbish, but when they saw Fireheart, they started to scramble toward him. The mat lurched, and their wails grew louder as river water sloshed over them. "Keep still," Fireheart gasped, paddling madly against the current. Briefly, he wondered if he could climb onto the rock and haul the kits up with him, but he was not sure how long it would be before the Sunning Rocks were completely submerged. His best plan was still to push the mat over to Graystripe. Looking back, he saw that his friend had already moved downstream, into a good position to catch the mat as it was swept toward him. "Here we go," Fireheart muttered. "Starkland, help us!" He pushed himself off from the rock, thrusting at the mat with his muzzle to guide it into the current. The 2 kits whimpered and flattened themselves against the twigs. Fireheart put every last scrap of energy into pushing the mat ahead of him with his nose and paws. He could feel exhaustion draining the strength from his limbs. His fur was soaked, and he was so cold he could hardly breathe. Raising his head and blinking water out of his eyes, he realized with horror that he had lost sight of Graystripe in the bank. It seemed as if there was nothing in the world but the churning water, the fragile mat of twigs, and the 2 terrified kits. Then he heard Graystripe's voice, sounding close by. "Fireheart! Fireheart, here!" Fireheart thrust again at the mat, trying to propel it toward the voice. It spun away from him, and his head went under. Coughing and choking, he clawed his way back to the surface, to see Graystripe pacing on dry land just a few tail lengths away. For a heartbeat, Fireheart felt relief that he was nearly there. Then he focused his blurred eyes on the kits again, and fear pulsed through him. The mat was beginning to break up. Fireheart watched helplessly as the twigs underneath the gray kit gave way, and the tiny creature was plunged into the torrent. That's the end of Chapter 11, and that's where we're going to stop for today. Not looking good. Fireheart has already had to rescue kits twice in this book. Where are their parents? Where are their parents? Like, both times, because in the training hollow, in chapter, 8? Like, Brindleface was with them, and then she wasn't. So where did she go? Like, where could she have gone in the 2 minutes or 5 minutes after the patrol passed by them? And then here, I mean, it's more reasonable that maybe the parents of these kids just lost them because the river is flooded in RiverClan, but still, where are your parents? Where are your parents? Okay, well, thank you for joining me for another episode. Yeah, this one's shorter. It's just more filler. The chapters were also super short. One was literally like 5 pages long, so that's just the nature of these books. So we'll see what happens next time, and if Fireheart and Graystripe rescue these kits, which hopefully they will. They usually succeed because they have main character syndrome. And we'll see if we learn anything more about the missing ThunderClan kits as well. Thank you for listening, and as always, may StarkClan light your path.